Hi, sports econ students. This lecture is going to cover the remedies for competitive imbalance, payroll imbalance, revenue imbalance, and then also championship imbalance is the fourth type of imbalance. But we're going to look at some of the ways that we can fix this. If we see that according to our two-team model, that we have the large market teams dominating the small market teams, and that persists over time, we want to consider ways to make our league more competitive. That makes it more exciting for fans, and overall the league is more healthy. So I'm going to share my screen and go through this. I've posted this under modules. This is the material in chapter 6 of your textbook. So make sure that you go through chapter 6 to supplement this lecture as well. So I'm going to share my screen. I've got that going. Okay, I'm going to go and open up this Word document, which like I said, I have posted for you in the module section along with this section of material. So here we are. We've used our two-team model. We looked at that before in previous lectures to show the difference between a small market and a large market, the earning potential because of their size, either of their community, intensity, fan intensity, what other reasons there are for this. We see that the large market teams have access to more resources than the small market. This can result in large market teams doing well and small market teams being crowded out. And so here are some of the ways. Let's review, first of all, the two-team model and identify these different types of imbalances that I talked about. And so here is our two-team model. You can see this on my screen here. There, I can scroll. You can see the large market team is on the left, the small market team is on the right. Those are the marginal revenue curves. Find the intersection, and that's going to see that the large market team will consistently win, in the long run, a 600 winning percentage, which means they win about 60% of their games. The small market team, their winning percentage works out to be about 400, which means they win about 40% of their games, which is less than half. So that if that persists in the long run, that's an imbalance. And that is what we call, in fact, down here, competitive imbalance. So competitive imbalance refers to the differential in the winning percentages. Okay. Another type of imbalance that you can see is this revenue imbalance. The revenue imbalance is shown as these triangular areas. Okay. The green horizontal dotted line here represents the payroll. And so you can think of at equilibrium, the teams pay pretty much their players a similar amount, right? So the last guy hired for a small market team would be similar to the last guy hired for a large market team. We're not talking about the superstars here, but on average across their payroll, the last guy hired, okay, because they buy units of talent. And obviously the large market, you can see the large market red line, they're going to pay more for their talent. And in fact, their payroll is down here. We'll get to that in just a second. Then the blue line is what the small market team can pay for their superstars. But at the end, or those minimum contracts for the rookies, right? It's going to be pretty similar. And that's what this green line, horizontal green line, represents there. That's the last unit of talent hired by both teams is pretty similar. Okay. However, you can see that the revenues being generated from those units of talent, okay? Superstars generate more fans and willing to pay more to see those guys on the court than small market team players, and they're superstars. So the triangular area, orange here for the large market, and gray triangular area here, shaded here for the small market, that's different, and that shows the revenue imbalance. The large market team is going to generate greater revenues than the small market. That's the revenue imbalance. The payroll imbalance is what's contributing to this. It allows them to collect more revenues. Notice the large market team would pay more for payroll, okay, than the small market team is able to. They can't afford because they're not generating the same size revenues as their large market members, other teams. So you can see here different types of imbalance. 1, competitive imbalance, difference in the win percent. 2, revenue imbalance. Large market teams have more revenues than small market. And then the payroll imbalance. They take their revenues and they spend more on talent, the large markets do, than the small markets. And so that's where the two-team model is really helpful in illustrating the problems of these imbalances if they're not addressed, if these continue in the long run. So let's scroll down. So what can we do about this? So some options that have been tried in various forms by the pro sports, like since the 90s, I would say, they've been wrestling with these in different forms. So you've heard about them, the NHL or the NFL or MLB have tried these things in different forms. It's not the same. Every league has tried them differently, but there's some general categories in what they've attempted to do to make the league much more competitive and much more fair, more equitable to all the teams that are in the league. Okay. One of these ideas is revenue sharing. And this is the idea that if the large market teams are able to, in fact, generate more revenues, that maybe some of those should be shared with our smaller market teams. This is the Robin Hood approach, take from the rich, give to the poor kind of idea. But when they've tried this, what they try to do is what's called gate revenue sharing. And they take a percentage of the gate, of the home gate, for whatever team is the home team. So that when the Yankees are playing at home, let's say against a small market team like the Pirates, in interdivisional play, right? To be across the league. Anyways, in this case, if the Yankees are at home, they take 20% of their gate revenues and give it to the visiting team. That's a lot of money because in New York, ticket prices are a lot higher than they are in Pittsburgh. When the Yankees come to Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh also has to share 20% with the Yankees, right? But that's a much smaller pie because the Pittsburgh team doesn't charge as much for their tickets. They can't. Okay. So in this case, we're taking proportionally the same amount, percentage, 20%, but it ends up when you look at this model, okay, we shift both of the marginal revenue curves down to represent the 20% less that they get to keep, right? Because now the Yankees don't get to keep all of the large market team doesn't get to keep 100%. They only get to keep 80, and the small market team only gets to keep 80 of theirs. What you notice, though, is now this hashtag gray area between the two marginal revenue curves for the large market, that's bigger than, supposedly, if my drawing were more correct here, but that is bigger than the blue shaded area here, which is what the small market teams have to give back to the large market teams. Okay, so everybody shares 20%. But when the small market team visits the large market, they get more than vice versa when the large market visits the small market. They're 20% in total dollar amounts is less. Okay, so you can see that. So this should help the small market teams, should redirect money to the small market teams because there's a net gain there. Okay, both teams are losing, but the large market teams lose more. Okay. The effect, however, though, there's nothing in the stipulations that says that the small market teams then have to reinvest that in talent. And what we often see is that that just goes to profit. It doesn't necessarily work its way back to the players. Okay. And so by doing this, by shifting these both down 20%, it doesn't affect how the two teams value the talent. The small market team is still going to value the talent, but only at 80%. The large market team values it still at 80%. And that's still going to end up with our equilibrium. So although the revenue sharing will direct extra revenues to the small market team, it does not change the competitive balance unless the small market owner actually takes that money and purposefully redirects it to his talent. Instead, what we often see is that the small market owners pocket the money and they buy a new yacht or a new house or something like that. Okay, so there's no guarantee to stop an owner from doing that. And that's why revenue sharing by itself, without some incentives to have those small market teams reinvest, does not necessarily work, has not worked yet. Okay, one thing that is a consequence of the revenue sharing is that the value of the talent for the last people hired, right, those bench players, does fall. See wages 1 and wages 2, because now the teams are only valuing the talent at 80% what they were valued before, their wages are going to fall. So this is revenue sharing. It reduces the payroll, right? So the players end up losing with revenue sharing. The owners end up getting wealthier. Okay, so one of the things that economists point out is without extra incentives to make sure that those owners don't just say thank you for the extra money and small market owners and just, use it for whatever else they want. Without that incentive to reinvest, we could just perpetuate this competitive imbalance to 600, 400 for a long period of time. And also we've now depressed wages, which is not good for our talent on the court. All right. So another option is, oh my gosh, these players, these superstar athletes are getting paid too much. We need to limit this. We need to stop them from getting these huge multi-million-dollar contracts. So let's put in a salary cap. The reason the small market teams can't compete is because they can't pay the superstar salaries. They can't pay as much as the large market teams. Okay, sounds like a great idea, except putting in this cap, it's going to create this disequilibrium position, and economists hate disequilibrium. So when we put in the cap, absolutely what's going to happen is we're hurting our players, right? Goes from wages 1 down to wages 2. And you may think as an individual, well, they're superstar spoiled brat athletes, whatever, right? Except if you take the money away from the players, who gets that money? The owners. So you're giving it to the rich billion-dollar owners instead of the millionaire athletes. So that's a judgment call you're going to have to make. Except when you're giving it to the players, the millionaire players, it's spread out. Whereas when you give it to one owner, it's very concentrated. So it's not the money's going to go away. It's not that they're going to charge less at the gate. They're already charging the right price at the gate if they sell out, right? Think about the NFL. I mean, you saw, hopefully you saw that they're 100%, 103, 105% capacity every game. They're selling them out, right? So they're not going to lower their ticket prices. Their owners are just going to say, hey, I have to give the players less? Cool. That's more for me to keep. Wait, is that what we want? I don't know. I don't think so. But that's what a salary cap does. It restricts the pay to the players. Their wages go down from wages 1 to wages 2. The owners now have more money. There's no guarantee that they're going to turn around. They can't buy more talent with it. What are the owners going to do? They're going to buy some more yachts. Great. How does that help the league? Okay. Anyways, so one of the problems is if we were to lower the salary cap, you would notice that at the 500, let's say hypothetically, that we would like it all teams have a 50% chance of winning, right? And going into a game, one team has a 50% chance of winning, the other team has a 50% chance. That's an even call. It's a coin toss, right? Wouldn't that be competitive? At the 500, notice my gray vertical dotted line here, right? At the salary cap, okay, which is well under where the two teams value the players, the small market team still values the talent less than the large market team. So what's going to happen is this creates a huge incentive for behind the scene, under the table deals. That large market team is going to provide other incentives or otherwise attempt to get around the salary cap, right? Do everything they can, or even try to compensate the small market team to let them have the player by giving a bribe or, buying a new Mercedes for the owner or something like that, right? As long as the large market team still values the player more than the small market team, that player is going to end up at the large market team, right? It always happens. These resources find their way to their best and highest use, regardless. And so salary caps in this case are effective in lowering payroll, if that was your point. But like I said, lowering payroll only means you've got the pie, right? And let's say that there's 100% pie and the owners and the players were sharing it 50-50 because of the collective bargaining agreement. And we said, oh no, you're only going to give the players 40. Well, that's giving the owners 60. They just went up 10%, right? And so that's what a salary cap does. It puts more money in the pockets of the owners, again, with no incentive for them to reinvest. And they can't, because they can't give the money to the players because of the salary cap. So this is a really bad idea, okay? So we don't like salary caps in this case. The one remedy that we have found that does work, in theory, get us to improved competitive balance, more equal footing between our teams, is the use of a luxury tax, where we recognize that some teams, like the Yankees, are going to pay whatever they want to their players anyways. We'll let them do that, but tax an amount above what the average teams are spending. So let's say that the average teams are spending, I don't know, 300 million on talent. The Yankees want to spend 500 million. We say, okay, you can spend 500 million, but for every million over 300, because that's what the rest of us are going to agree to spend, right? You have to contribute an equal amount to the league. So what the Yankees end up doing is they're going to spend 500 plus the extra 200, because it's the difference between the 500 and the 300, is going to then be given back to the league. So this luxury tax, what you see is that does in fact rotate this down, because now they have to pay the tax. So the tax is collected from the large market team. That's going to lower the value of the talent, because to hire another player, they have to pay a tax on that player. Okay. So for, you can see, let's say that the tax is like here at this dotted blue line, which is what the small market teams or the average teams can afford, right? So maybe that's at 300 and the Yankees are up here at 500, right? Well, that's going to lower them. The 200, this green shaded area in between the two marginal revenue curves, is the amount of the tax. And it is literally, it's if you increase your spending $1, you have to pay an extra dollar to the league. So if you increase your spending 100 million, that's 100 million that's coming back to MLB. And sometimes the Yankees are just happy to write that check. Okay. And large market teams can do that. Then that's 200 million that is coming back into the league that they can redistribute to the small market teams, okay, to help them out. So in this case, because of the tax, it does change the value of the incremental talent. One more player is going to cost twice his salary, right? You have to pay the salary to the player and then the fee to the league. So you pay double. So you hire a guy for 10 million. And that's really going to cost you 20 million, because you got to give 10 million to the league if you're over the limit, right? For this luxury tax idea. So this really works to direct the money away from the large market and then into the league. And then the league determines how best to allocate that to the smallest teams, to the most needy teams, the teams with the lowest revenue potential. Okay. And you can see here on our model that when that happens, this could in fact move us from the 600, 400 to the 500, 500, could eliminate our competitive imbalance if we were to use a luxury tax on a wide scale, if all the leagues were to use such a thing. So economists love the luxury tax idea. We also like the idea of the money coming into the league and then the league determining how to pass it out. And if teams, let's say, are tanking it because they want to get a good draft pick or something like that, we can punish those. We can have disincentives. You're going to lose your tax money, your revenues that you would get from this pool of tax revenues that we collected, if you don't engage in behaviors that are going to improve your team. Okay, so it provides an incentive. So owners that just take the money and buy yachts would not be eligible to get more money in the future. Okay, so that's the really cool thing about having this tax money flowing in. Whereas with the gate revenues, it went directly to the teams. The luxury tax money flows in through the league offices, and then the league offices can determine the mechanisms through which the small market teams can apply for this money if needed, and then can show improvement and get more money, right? So this way we can incentivize the system to get those small market team owners to really invest in improving their teams now that they have the resources to actually do it, okay? So that's why we like luxury taxes. And the last one, which doesn't use the two-team model, is this idea of a reverse order of finished draft. By having our small market teams that are consistently, only winning 40% of their games, able to draft the biggest and most high-valued talent first, the reverse order of finished draft allows them to get a good draft pick that will help them. The problem with the reverse order of finished draft is first they have to be able to afford them. They have to be able to sign them and have that room in their budget to pay them. And then that only works for their initial rookie contract. In 3 to 5 years, the player is going to be eligible for free agency and could leave, and the small market teams can't afford to keep those players. So the reverse order of finished draft is very limited in scope because it really helps the small market teams only for a few years, and then the player goes on to bigger and better things in the larger markets where they can get what they're really valued at. For example, the Pittsburgh Pirates had Barry Bonds before the San Francisco Giants stole him. Pittsburgh Pirates had him as a rookie, drafted him, and then as soon as he was eligible for free agency, he was gone because the Pirates are a small market team and couldn't afford to pay what San Francisco, California could pay, much larger market, right? Kind of idea. So the reverse order of finished draft, it does help the small market teams to land that talent and to be good for a couple years while that superstar player is there. There's always that lingering thought, though, that as soon as that player is eligible for free agency, they're going to jump ship. So along with the reverse order of finished draft, we would like to see perhaps the luxury tax kick in, which would then provide the money so that these small market teams that have landed good draft picks can then afford to keep them for a much longer period of time and build perhaps a championship team. So those are some ways that our sports leagues have been working on these issues of competitive imbalance. Not all of them are working, and they continue to tweak them. Different leagues try different things. So I think the book does a pretty good job of explaining some of these as well. So go read the chapter, and hopefully this has helped. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out as well. Hope you're all staying safe. And we're nearing the end of the quarter, that you're getting all your work done. Don't forget about the article review, 2-page article review, and then also a PowerPoint presentation with voiceover, so I can hear you giving your presentation. If you want to actually like give it to an empty classroom and tape yourself doing that, that would be fine as well. But I think sitting at your desk and talking over your PowerPoint slides is going to be fantastic. It's a great way that I can hear your thoughts as well as see the beautiful PowerPoint that you have presented on your article that was approved previously. Again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. And with that, I'm going to attempt to go back in here and close this out. Zoom. There we go. And then my meeting controls. And here we go. All right. Oh, here we go. Okay. And so with that, I'm going to stop recording, I think. More. All right. So I will talk to you guys later.